Dear friends, welcome to the next session for Information Security Fundamentals. In today's session, we will be looking at the distributed denial of service attack in brief, as well as discuss some of the best practices to protect our PC from attacks. So let's get started. To begin with, the distributed denial of service, which is also known as DDoS attack, is a malicious attempt to disrupt the normal traffic of a targeted server, service, or network by overwhelming the target or its surrounding infrastructure with a flood of internet traffic, which means that it increases the internet traffic and disrupts the normal functioning of the internet traffic or disrupts the normal functioning of the targeted server or the services provided by that particular server or that particular system. DDoS attack achieve effectiveness by utilizing multiple compromised computer systems as sources of attack traffic. Exploited machines can include computers and other network devices such as IoT device. So network resources like Internet of Things devices or IoT devices are basically those devices which are connected via internet and they share some information amongst them. So DDoS attack makes use of such kind of devices which are already compromised and there are malwares installed in those particular systems. They are carried out with networks of internet connected machines. So in order to perform DDoS, it is extremely important that all of the machines wherever the DDoS is performed is connected to the internet. These networks consist of computers and other devices which have been infected with malware, allowing them to be controlled remotely by an attacker. So whenever an malware is installed in the system, if the attacker can remotely control those malwares and the systems that are installed with these malwares, then the DDoS attack can be performed over internet. These individual devices are referred to as bots or zombies, and a group of bots is called a botnet. So whichever device is compromised, it is basically a bot or a zombie, and a group of such different bots or zombies are called a botnet. So basically DDoS attack will be done using this botnet. So once a botnet has been established, the attacker is able to direct an attack by sending remote instructions to each bot. And when a victim's server or network is targeted by the botnet, each bot sends requests to the target's IP address, potentially causing the server or network to be overwhelmed or become very busy, resulting in denial of service to normal traffic. Now suppose there is an attacker who is sitting remotely and it has the control of around 3 different bots. Let's say B1, B2 and B3 respectively. Now this attacker will remotely send instructions to each of these bots, and these bots on the other hand will try to flood in the network with n number of requests to that particular server or that particular service that it is trying to attack. Now if this kind of request comes repeatedly from the bots, which is of no significance or low significance, then the entire network will be jammed or entire network will become busy. And if some other computer C1 is trying to communicate with the server will not be able to respond back to this computer because the server is busy attending to these many requests which are coming from different bots. However, these requests are not very relevant requests, but even then the server is busy attending to the requests by these bots rather than responding to a genuine request which is coming from C1. Now, because each bot is a legitimate internet device, separating the attack traffic from normal traffic can be difficult. So basically, since all these bots are compromised devices, but they are genuine devices over the internet, so it is basically another computer system or another remote mobile device which is similar to C1. So the server basically cannot make out that which is the correct one and which is the wrong one, so or which is not of use. So the server will give equal treatment to each of the requests, and based on this equal treatment, it will be busy offering its services to B1, B2 and B3 rather than C1, and segregating the genuine from the fake ones becomes difficult. So now we will talk about best practices to protect the PC. So some of the best practices which will be used or which are generally used in order to protect our personal computers from the various threats that we have discussed in our previous sessions, like malwares, DDoS, etc. So we need to follow several different steps in order to protect our PC. Initially, we have to take care that there is an antivirus software somewhere installed in our system. There should be an anti-spyware software. Windows and applications should be continuously and constantly updated. There should be security bundles associated. There should be personal firewalls if possible. For wireless security, we have to take care of various guidelines and protocols. And there are some more best practices which should be done while attending to any of the internet related activities. So we will look at this one by one. So the first thing that will come is the antivirus software. So basically, antivirus software or an AV software, also known as anti-malware, is a computer program which is used to prevent, detect and remove the malware. So basically, it is responsible for preventing. However, it also detects and removes some of the low priority malwares. Microsoft generally claims, based on their internal survey or the survey that they have conducted, that fewer than 30% of all users have up-to-date antivirus software. Now we have to understand that as time progresses, the virus definitions are also changing. That means the developers are creating new viruses every moment, or the advanced version of the already created virus. So it is extremely important for us to keep an up-to-date version of the antivirus that we have installed, so that it can cope up with the latest and the new virus definitions. So when Microsoft conducted a survey, it found that although most of us uses an antivirus software, but only 30% of them have basically an up-to-date software or up-to-date antivirus software with up-to-date antivirus definitions. Now, this is extremely important from the perspective that we have to look after the latest and the newer definitions, and in order to do that, we have to update our software. However, most of us don't do it because of the various expenses related to it, as maintenance, we already discussed, involves some amount of money, and in certain cases it is extremely expensive. So we refrain, or the organizations refrain themselves from updating their antivirus software. And if we do not have an up-to-date antivirus software, these vulnerabilities will not be fixed and people can attack through the vulnerabilities. So whatever be the expense or the cons associated with the maintenance of the software, it is mandatory that we keep an updated version of the software. Most of the antivirus manufacturers have informations and alert pages where you can find primers on malware, education to malwares, as well as alerts to most of the current threats. So antivirus software initially needs to be installed and regularly updated so that the vulnerabilities can be addressed and they can be prevented, detected, and removed from the system. So, next coming to anti-spyware software. Now, anti-spyware software is designed and it is used to detect and remove spywares. While this type of software was common in the past, modern antivirus software can detect and remove spyware applications as well. Now, talking about spyware, we have a number of spywares which is basically a threat to our system. So, we will discuss some of them here. First of all is the domestic spyware, which is often legitimately used to monitor computers use at work or by parents to keep a track of their children's cell phone habits, or apps that track down your smartphone when it is lost or stolen. So basically these are some of the legitimate uses or correct uses of these spywares to make a log or to make an identification, or you can monitor your machines or the computers which are already in work using these spywares. Or parents can also monitor what their children has been checking out on their phones, or whether your smartphone, whether it is lost or where it is misplaced, or you can actually track down your smartphone using spywares. But these are just the correct applications of spyware. Now these same applications can be used in order to attack your system if this spyware is compromised or using the same set of spyware. So that is a non-legitimate use of spyware. Next is this surveillance spyware, because it collects personal information about you from your computer and sends to the third party. So this is little risky as compared to domestic spyware, because in domestic spyware the information is kept within one party only. That is only the attacker will be utilizing that particular information. However, in surveillance type of spyware, the attacker will directly attack or spy into the system and send all your information related to the system as well as your personal accounts to a third party. So this could include credentials like passwords and credit card information, which could be misutilized. The third type is adware or commercial spyware, which is used to gather information about you for targeted advertising. It can also subject you to advertising in the form of pop-up or as in-app advertising in your cell phone. So basically sometimes we get various pop-ups related to various applications while that application is still on use. So those kind of pop-ups we can also consider as a spyware, and that spyware is known as adware, where advertisement is used in order to gather information about you for targeted advertising. So this can also prove to be fatal or difficult to deal with, because all your personal information would be lost and it is actually displayed to the public for advertisement purpose. The fourth type is a keylogger spyware, which records your computer's keystrokes and sends them to the third party. Particularly heinous, it can gather your login credentials, banking information, or any other sensitive information. So this keylogger spyware, we have also discussed this previously. It will take care of all the keystrokes and it sends to the device driver, and it directly attacks. This type of spyware is generally used to monitor the device driver and attack it and send the keystroke information to the third party for the non-legitimate use regarding any of your banking information or sensitive information. So these spywares would be handled using an anti-spyware software, which will be detecting and removing the spyware whenever and whichever way possible. So next is Updating Windows and other applications. As already discussed, we need to continuously update a software after being installed because there are various vulnerabilities or there are various newer virus definitions that are coming into the market, and in order to address them it is extremely important for us to keep our antivirus software or keep our software in at par with the latest definitions. So Microsoft Update basically is the website where users can download updates for various Windows related products, because whenever we are using a Windows operating system, we have a lot of applications associated with it, and all of them can be compromised if they are not updated to the current version. But for most of the part it is automated, so it is automatically these updates are downloaded and it is installed, so we do not have to bother that explicitly we need to update them. But for some of them it needs to be updated manually, that is going to these particular sites and updating the softwares in order to check whether everything is working properly or not. Otherwise, if we feel that it is automatically downloaded and it will be installed and it is running properly in the system, it might not be the scenario also. It might not get automatically downloaded, or it might not be installed without manual intervention. So we need to understand that it is working properly. We need to check it, and we need to verify if they are actually being installed and working fine in our systems. We also have vendor specific patches for various applications like iTunes and Google desktops. So these are vendor specific patches, that means vendor specific settings for each of the software. Suppose we are using a third party application like iTunes, etc. So we can use those vendor specific patches which the vendors release from time to time and incorporate those patches in our software so that they stay up to date regarding all the security credentials. The next we will talk about security bundles. So basically these are the bundles which are associated with various different types of security softwares. It can include antivirus software, personal firewall software, anti-spyware software, content filtering, parental control, pop-up blockers, anti-spam capabilities. So it is basically a combination type of security which is known as security bundles, and these bundles are capable of taking care for not for only one type of malware but multiple different types of malwares. It can be difficult for the average user to set up because it has a lot of configurations and a lot of technical knowledge is needed in order to install these security bundles, because it is not just involving one software but multiple different softwares which will be addressing multiple different components required for installation. And if it is installed by a non-technical person, or it is installed by a person having limited technical knowledge about that particular security bundle, it might lead to incorrect configurations and might provide a false sense of security. That means it will show that it has been installed and everything is working fine, but actually it is not working fine. And then we will assume that okay, since everything is installed properly, then there is a secured feeling that my system is protected. However, if that person lacks the technical knowledge regarding installation, it may be not installed in the proper way, and the sense of security that we had developed or we had assumed basically is not a true one. It is a false sense of security, and we will not be bothered much about the vulnerabilities because we have already installed the security bundle according to us. But since it is not correctly installed, that security will be compromised. For example, McAfee, Symantec, Computer Associates, Trend Micro, Zone Alarm, F-Secure, Microworld, Panda Software, Softwin, Bitdefender, Professional Edition, Extendia, Security Suite, all those softwares basically provides the security bundles which are capable of addressing different types of vulnerabilities. The next we'll talk about is a personal firewall. So personal firewall is basically a software installed on the end user's PC which controls communications to and from the user's PC. It permits or denies communication based on security policy the user sets. So here it is extremely important that the personal firewall is basically the definitions given by the user in context to the communications to and from their own system. So it is used for handheld devices as well, like air scanner, Bluefire, etc. So sometimes we can ourselves set the guidelines for our own machines. So those type of firewalls are known as the personal firewall, and whatever the user sets would be implemented in case of the communication from the user's PC to some other PC. So different personal firewall programs like Zone Labs, Symantec, Norton personal firewall, Kirio, Tiny Software's personal firewall, Mac OS X, Windows 7 and above. So these platforms, they provide a personal firewall mechanism where the user can define their own guidelines in while establishing a communication with some other personal computer. Talking about wireless security, since most of the systems are connected via a wireless medium in present day scenario, we have to understand that wireless security is extremely important from the perspective that these wireless devices are protected. So first of all, we have to implement MAC address filtering. Now MAC address filtering associates to those machine addresses which will be allowed in order to communicate with your own personal computer. Turn off unnecessary services like Telnet and FTP if they are not in use. Then change the default SSID or disable SSID broadcast. So we have to change all the default things into a personalized or a specific IP address or a specific IP which should be shared only with the trusted channels. So change the default channel. Suppose there is a channel which generally is a default channel for all systems, so we have to change that particular default channel and use a specific channel and share the channel ID with only those trusted parties with whom we wish to communicate. Similarly, disable DHCP on access point. All these things will be discussed in details in your subsequent sessions. However, for you to understand as of now, we have to disable the dynamic host control protocol on access points so that it dynamically do not allow other systems to get or to communicate with your system. We have to encrypt, which is not enabled by default on most of the access points. So we have to use encryption, or we have to encrypt our access points so that not anyone can access those access points. And we have to also change the default admin username and password and use our own username and password so that it is not compromised. We also can specify the number of clients which can attach or which can connect to the access point at one time. So if we want to communicate with 5 different computers at a single time, we can do so that unnecessary spamming does not take place from other intruder computers. Some of the other best practices which are involved is we should switch off the PC when it is not in use and view the email as text only, and disable all the functions that automatically views email as HTML, because whenever it is in HTML mode, it has the potential of getting attacked by online attackers. Do not automatically open attachments because those attachments might have malware which might get automatically installed when you open those attachments. Do not run software programs of unknown origin. So it is extremely important that we go and verify the software license as well as the various protocols associated with it. We have to delete chain emails and junk email. Do not forward or reply any one of them, and we should not reply back to email or unsubscribe or subscribe anything or remove ourselves from an unknown list, because sometimes we get all those emails from various advertising companies. We should not click on to unsubscribe link immediately, because if we do that, the attackers who have spammed our inbox with these kind of advertising emails will understand that this is a live email account and people are actually communicating with from this account, whether it might be through a click or through an email. Basically that account is active, so it gives them the potential to attack the system, and moreover doing so will increase the spam mails in our mailboxes. So we have to back up our critical data and documents regularly, so that even if our data is attacked by any type of malware or ransomware and they are encrypted and there is unavailability or non-availability of data and resources, we can easily retrieve them from the backup that we have generated. So these are all different types of control mechanisms related to our personal computers in order to protect our system from malwares, ransomwares, denial of service attack and identity theft, etc. So that is all for today. Thank you.